The bark in the sky over Velor was always dark, filled with cold winds and thick clouds. Rilke stood in the rain, her thin cloak already soaked. Her hands were shaking not from the cold, but from fear. She looked down at the small crystal inn. Her hand, glowing faintly. It showed her son's heartbeat, weak, but still there. He had only days left. Maybe less. The medicine was far away on a human colony. And it cost more than her entire village could gather in a year. Her son's face flashed in her mind, small, fragile, but always smiling. She had to save him. There was only one way left. She stepped forward. Toward the black market hub buried under the city. The air inside was thick with smoke and secrets. Creatures from many worlds whispered, traded, and sold things that should never be sold. Weapons, illegal tech, and sometimes even people. She moved carefully, her eyes searching for the broker. Everyone had warned her, never trust the humans. They are monsters, they said, full of rage and power. But Rilke didn't care anymore. She was not here for safety. She was here for her son. A tall, thin figure approached. The broker wore a dark coat, hiding his face. "You're late," he said, his voice like ice. "You still want to sell yourself to a human?" Rilke nodded slowly. "I need the credits for medical treatment," she said, her voice quiet. "Payment will go directly to the child's account." The broker said, "If the human agrees." He looked at her with unreadable eyes. "Once the deal is done, there's no escape," he warned. "You will belong to whoever buys you." "I understand," Rilke whispered. A door opened behind the broker, and a human stepped inside. He was tall and broad, wearing simple clothes, no armor, no weapons. His face was rough, but not cruel. He said nothing, only looked at Rilke for a long moment. Then he nodded once. The broker seemed surprised. "You don't want to ask her questions?" "No," the human said. "She'd do." He placed a small device on the table. It lit up green, and the transaction was complete. Rilke felt a cold weight press on her wrist tracker. It meant she now belonged to this man, her child's. "Treatment is covered," the broker said, checking his screen. The human gave a small nod again and turned to leave. Rilke followed, silent. Heart pounding, she had done it. Her son would live, but now her life was no longer hers. The journey to the human's home was quiet. He didn't speak much, only told her his name. Elias. He flew a small ship, old but clean. He gave her food and a blanket. She waited for orders, for chains, for pain. Nothing came. When they landed, she expected a cage. Instead, Elias led her to a small house on a green planet. There were no guards, no locks on the door, only soft lights and warm air. "You can rest here," Elias said. Pointing to a bedroom, she looked at him, confused. "I am your servant now," she said. "What do you want me to do?" He looked at her carefully. "Sleep," he said. "Eat. You're not here to suffer." Rilke didn't understand. She lay awake that night, staring at the ceiling. What kind of human was this? Was he tricking her? Was he playing with her mind before the real pain began? But the next morning, nothing changed. He gave her space, respect, even kindness. He let her check her son's condition. The treatment had begun. The boy would live. She cried quietly that night. Not from pain, but from something else. She didn't know what it was yet. One evening, Elias handed her a small object, a necklace. It was old, human-made, with a carved blue stone. "My wife's," he said. "She died 3 years ago." "She would have liked you." Rilke held the necklace in her hand, unsure what to say. No one had given her a gift since before the war. Why was this human being kind to her? What did he really want? In her heart, fear still lived, but something else had started to grow too. A strange feeling, dangerous but warm. She didn't trust it, not yet, but she couldn't stop thinking about it. And in the quiet shadows of that strange house, a new story had just begun. Rilke stood at the doorway, unsure if she should enter or run away. The house was small but clean, made of smooth earthstone and strange wood. There were pictures on the walls, faces of smiling humans she didn't know. A man, a woman, and a small child. The woman looked like she laughed often. The child had bright eyes, like stars. Rilke didn't understand why it made her chest hurt. She looked away and stepped inside. Elias didn't follow her right away. He gave her space. That confused her the most. She had expected to be watched, controlled, commanded instead. He simply said, "Your room is on the left." Then he walked into another part of the house and disappeared. Rilke looked at the door to her room. It wasn't locked. She touched it carefully. It opened without a sound. Inside was a soft bed, a small table, and warm lights. No chains, no cages. There was even a blanket folded neatly at the corner of the bed. She didn't know what to do. She sat down slowly, waiting for something, maybe a trick, maybe a trap. Hours passed. The house stayed quiet. Elias didn't return until the evening. Holding 2 bowls of food, he placed one on the table beside her. "It's safe," he said simply. Then he walked away with his own bowl. Rilke stared at the food. It smelled strange but good. Still, she waited until he was gone before taking a bite. She didn't trust him, not yet. That night, she didn't sleep much. The silence of the house was louder than the noise of the city. There was no screaming, no crying, no commands. Only the sound of the wind outside and her own heartbeat. In the morning, she woke to sunlight through the window. The scent of earth flowers drifted in, soft and sweet. She dressed and walked in too. The kitchen. Elias was there, making something on a hot metal surface. He looked at her and nodded. "You don't have to help," he said, "but if you want to, I won't stop you." Rilke was not used to choice. For a moment, she just stood there. Then she picked up a cloth and began wiping the counter. It was strange, doing something without being told. "Stranger still," he said, "thank you." Later that day, Elias handed her a small screen. It showed her son in a recovery chamber. Being treated by human doctors, he looked weak, but alive. She touched the screen, her fingers shaking. "You paid for this?" she asked, voice low. Elias nodded. "I told you I would," he said. "Your son is safe now." Rilke didn't know what to say. No one had ever done something so big for her without wanting something in return. "Why?" she whispered. Elias didn't answer at first. He looked out the window, where the earth's sun was setting over golden hills. "I lost someone," he said finally. "A child. She was sick, and I couldn't save her." The silence after his words was heavy, not cold, but sad. Rilke looked at him. And for the first time, she didn't see just a human. She saw a father, broken but still standing. "Now I can't walk away when someone else is losing their child," he added. "It hurts too much." That night, Rilke sat by the window, watching the stars. She thought about her son, about this strange human, about the way he spoke soft, without anger or control. Was it possible that all the stories about humans were wrong? Maybe not all of them, but maybe not this one. The next day, Rilke cleaned the garden without being asked. She found joy in planting small seeds in the soil. Elias joined her, and for a while they worked side by side without talking. But the silence wasn't empty, was peaceful. She asked about the flowers. He told her their names in human words. He laughed when she mispronounced one, not cruelly, just softly, like wind through leaves each day. Something changed between them. Trust was still a small thing, like a tiny spark, but it was there. And it was growing, and still, Rilke wondered. Why didn't he act like the humans she had heard about? Why didn't he use her, control her, hurt her? She watched him from a distance sometimes. How he paused when looking at the photo of his child. How he smiled when the flowers bloomed. How he never raised his voice, even when tired or angry. He was dangerous, yes, but not in the way she feared. Not a monster. Just human. And for the first time, Rilke wondered if being here at this quiet house, with this quiet man, was not a prison, but something else entirely. Something she didn't dare name yet, but something that made her feel alive. Again. Rilke had lived in Elias's house for 9 days. 9 quiet days, filled with strange peace and growing confusion. Every morning, she waited for the moment the mask would fall, for the human to show his real face. But every day, he stayed the same kind, distant but gentle. She helped him in the garden, cleaned the house. And sometimes they shared meals, but fear still sat inside her like a stone. Not fear of pain anymore. Fear of not understanding. One evening, after dinner, she sat near the window again. The sky was dark, filled with stars. Elias came and placed something beside her, a cup of hot tea. Then he walked away, leaving her alone. As always, she picked up the cup slowly, hands trembling. It was warm and sweet, but tears filled her eyes. This simple kindness hurt. More than any cage, that night, Rilke made a choice. She packed a small bag, took the old necklace Elias had given her, and slipped out of the house. She didn't know where she was going. She just knew she had to leave. She walked through the trees under the starlight. Her boots crushed dry leaves. Her breath was shallow. She kept looking back, expecting to see Elias chasing her, but no one followed. Hours passed, and she grew tired. She sat near a stream. Watching the water shimmer, she whispered to herself, "He was too kind. It was a trick. It has to be." But even she wasn't sure anymore. Was it really fear of him that made her run? Or fear of how safe she felt with him? Suddenly, a voice broke the silence. "You don't have to run from me." It was Elias, standing on the other side of the stream. He had no weapon, no anger in his eyes, just a quiet sadness. "I'm not your prisoner," Rilke said sharply. "No," Elias said. "You're not? Then why did you come?" She asked. "To make sure you're safe," he replied, "not to bring you back." She stared at him, confused. "Why?" She whispered again. "I bought your freedom," Elias said slowly. "I didn't buy you." Rilke looked down, her fists clenched. "Then why keep me in your house?" "Because I couldn't leave you in that market," he said. "I know what they do to people there. I didn't want to own you. I just wanted to give you a choice." Rilke didn't speak for a long time. She looked up at the stars. Trying to find words that didn't exist, she thought about her child alive, recovering because of this human, and now he stood in front of her, asking for nothing. "Why did you care?" she asked finally, her voice breaking. Elias walked to the edge of the stream. "When I lost my daughter," he said, "it broke something in me. She died because no one helped in time. No one cared. I promised myself, if I ever had the chance to help another parent," he paused, breathing deeply, "I wouldn't walk away again." The air between them was quiet, heavy with unsaid things. Rilke stood slowly, her legs weak. She crossed the stream and stood in front of Elias. She looked up at him, searching his face. No lies, no hunger, no cruelty, just a human carrying pain and silence. "I don't understand humans," she said softly. Elias gave a small, sad smile. Most of us don't understand ourselves either." They walked back together, saying nothing, but something had changed. Not outside in the wind or the stars, but inside her, back at the house. Elias handed her a small device. "You can leave any time," he said. "This opens the tracker. On your wrist, you can remove it." Rilke took it in her hand, stared at it for a long moment. Then slowly, she placed it on the table without using it. "I'll stay," she said, "not because I have to, but because I want to." Elias didn't answer, but the quiet between them no longer felt empty. It felt warm. The next morning, Rilke walked into the kitchen before Elias. She made the tea, set the cups, and even hummed a little tune. When Elias entered, surprised, she smiled not wide, but real. "I think I'd like to plant strawberries today," she said. And that was the day the fear inside her began to crack, not all at once, but enough for something else to start growing trust, and maybe, someday, something even stronger than that. Rilke never thought a house could feel like home, not after everything she'd lost, but now. Each morning started with warm tea, soft sunlight, and the quiet hum of safety. The garden bloomed under her care. And Elias never forced her to speak when she didn't want to. He only shared the silence with her hand sometimes. That was more comforting than words. Her son's health was improving fast. She received updates from the human med station. He was walking again, smiling again, and slowly, piece by piece. Her fear of Elias was turning into something new. Something she still didn't understand fully, but it no longer frightened her. It gave her strength. Then the sky changed, one evening. While Rilke was watering the flowers, a sound broke the quiet, a deep, pulsing hum, low and sharp. She looked up and froze. A ship was descending sleek, black and unmarked. Not a trader, not a colony supply vessel. This was something else. Elias ran outside, his eyes narrowing. He pulled a scanning device from his belt. His jaw clenched. "Pirates," he muttered. Rilke felt a cold wave spread through her chest. "Why are they here?" She asked. "They scan colonies for off-world tech, rare beings," he paused, "and slaves." Her stomach twisted. "They came for me," she whispered. Elias looked at her, calm but fierce. "No," he said firmly. "They'll get nothing." She had never seen him like this before, until now. He was gentle, quiet. But something powerful lived beneath his silence. Now it was awake. He opened a hidden panel inside the barn, revealing old weapons. Rilke stepped back, shocked. "You were a soldier," she said slowly. He nodded once. "A long time ago. I hoped I'd never need these again." He handed her a pulse shield. "You ever used one of these?" "Yes," she answered without hesitation. "Good," he said, "because I'm not letting them take you." They set up defenses, silent turrets hidden in the trees, light traps under the soil. Elias moved with focus, like someone who had done this too many times before. But he was careful, not just with the traps, but with her. He trusted her with weapons, with plans, with his back. That night, they waited, side by side in the dark. Elias watched the scanner. Rilke watched him. He was calm, like stone, but his hand never strayed far from hers. When the pirates landed, the ground shook. Figures in black armor spread out across the forest. They moved fast, but not quietly enough. One stepped on a trap, instantly stunned. Another was taken out by a turret, but more kept coming. A voice echoed through the trees. "Give us the alien, and we'll leave the rest of you alone." Rilke flinched. Elias stood tall, walked toward the trees, and shouted back, "She's not yours. She's not for sale." The pirates laughed. "Then we'll burn your house down." The next moments were chaos. Lasers lit the forest in flashes of red and blue. Elias moved like fire, sharp, fast, deadly. Rilke stayed behind cover, shielding the rear. She struck down a pirate who tried to flank them. Her heart raced, not with fear but purpose. They were not master and servant, not human and alien. They were a team. After hours of battle, the last pirate ship limped away, smoking and scarred. The silence that followed was thick with smoke and heavy breathing. Rilke collapsed to her knees, exhausted. Elias crouched beside her, checking for injuries. "I'm fine," she said, breathless. "You?" "Nothing serious," he replied, wiping dirt from his face. They sat in the ruined garden, surrounded by scorch marks and broken branches. Rilke looked around and whispered, "I brought this on you." "No," Elias said firmly. "They came. Because they saw someone they thought was weak, but they were wrong." She looked at him, eyes wide. "You risked your life. So did you," he said, smiling faintly. "You didn't run." For the first time, Rilke smiled back. A small, tired smile, but real. "I didn't want to," she said quietly. "I had something worth protecting." That night, they didn't sleep. They sat by the broken fence, looking at the stars. The fear was still there, but something stronger had taken root. Trust, respect, and maybe, just maybe, the first breath of something even more dangerous: hope. The house was quiet again, but it was not the same silence. Now the walls carried burn marks, the windows were cracked, the garden torn by fire. Yet, the quiet felt heavier not from battle scars, but from the words that hadn't been spoken. Yet Rilke stood in the doorway, watching Elias hammer broken boards back into place. He moved with steady hands, like nothing had changed, but something had. Something deep and invisible, like a wire pulled too tight. Her communicator bipped a message from the Villari Council. She hadn't spoken to them in months. She stepped outside to take the call. The hologram flickered, revealing the familiar face of Elder Mara, stern, elegant, and cold. "Rilke," the elder said. "Your child is stable, recovering well." Rilke felt relief, but the elder continued. "We are sending a ship to retrieve you. You will be brought home, home." The word felt hollow in her ears. "Your time among the humans is over," Mara added, "and your record will be forgiven." Rilke opened her mouth, but no words came out, not yet. Later that evening, she sat with Elias under the broken roof. The stars above looked the same as always, but her world had tilted. He handed her a cup of tea, not saying anything. He already knew, "They're coming for me." She said at last. Elias nodded once. "I thought they might. They said I can go back," she whispered. "Be free again, sounds like." "Good news," he said softly. She turned to him, eyes searching his face. "Is it?" Elias didn't answer, not because he didn't care, but because he didn't want to influence her choice. Rilke stared at the fire pit, remembering everything, the cold cell at the market, the first night in his house, the garden, her sons, healing the fight in the forest, and this quiet, strange man who had never once asked her for anything. "I thought freedom was the only thing I wanted," she said. "But now?" She paused, not sure how to finish the sentence. Elias sipped his tea. "You don't owe me anything." "Rilke," he said, "you did what any parent would do. You made a deal to save your child." "I didn't expect to survive it," she admitted, "let alone find something like this." He looked at her finally. His eyes held no demand, no plea, just something that felt dangerously close to sorrow. "I never expected you to stay," he said, "but I hoped, maybe, one day, you'd choose to." The fire crackled between them, like a line they hadn't crossed yet. Rilke reached into her pocket and pulled out the tracker removal key. She stared at it, her thumb over the activation button. One press, and she'd be free of it. Free of the symbol that once meant she had been bought. But now, it felt like more than a symbol. It felt like a choice waiting to be made. She didn't press it, she placed it on the table. Untouched, Elias said nothing, but she saw his jaw tighten, not in anger, but to stop himself from hoping too much. That night, she packed her things, not because she had decided to leave, but because she needed to face the past. She needed to see her people again to understand if home still felt like home. "I'll come back," she said before boarding the transport ship. Elias gave her a small nod. "I won't wait," he said gently, "but I'll be here." His voice was steady. But she could feel the break inside it, and something in her chest cracked. Too, she wanted to run back into his arms, but she needed to walk away first. On the flight, she stared out the window. The stars didn't seem as bright without him beside her when she landed on Velar. Her people welcomed her politely but coldly. She was no longer one of them, not fully. Some whispered that she had gone soft. Others said she had fallen for a human. They didn't know the truth. She hadn't fallen. She had been lifted. Her son hugged her tightly, his strength returning more each day. She wept into his hair, grateful he was alive. But when he asked, "Are we staying here now, Mama?" she couldn't answer right away. She looked around at her old home. The walls still stood, but the warmth was gone. She had left part of her heart on that quiet farm. In the hands of a man who never tried to hold it. That night, she stared at the stars again, and for the first time in weeks, she felt cold. The next morning, she gave her son a choice. "Would you like to visit the man who saved your life?" The boy's eyes lit up. "Yes," he said. "I want to see him." And in that moment, her decision became clear. She hadn't been sold. She had been rescued, not just from slavery, but from a life without love. The sky above Velar was too quiet. Rilke sat in her old home, surrounded by the same walls, same doors, same cold voices. But nothing felt the same. Her son played in the courtyard with other children, laughing. His laughter was the only sound that brought her peace now. She was surrounded by her people, yet she felt alone. Everything here was familiar, but not comforting. The faces that once gave her strength now looked at her with caution. Some called her brave for surviving with a human. Others called her broken. "She stayed too long," they whispered. "She forgot what we are." Rilke didn't answer them. She simply walked through the village with her chin high and her heart quietly aching. Everywhere she went, she compared it to somewhere else: a farmhouse, a garden, a warm cup of tea under starlight. A place where silence wasn't cold, it was shared. Her son tugged her hand one evening. "Will we go back?" he asked softly, to the human man. She looked down at him. His eyes had healed, his body strong again. But there was something else in his voice, hope. "I don't know," she whispered. "I don't know if he'll still want us." The next day, a package arrived. It was small and wrapped in old earth paper. Inside was a flower, dried but perfectly kept, and a note written in rough, careful handwriting. "You said you liked this one the best. I found it growing again. Thought you'd want to know." No signature. No message of love. But it was enough. She held the flower to her chest, closed her eyes, and breathed in the ghost of its scent. It smelled like the farm, like memory, like something unfinished. Later that night, she sat under the stars with her son in her lap. He looked up and said, "I think he misses us." Rilke didn't speak, but her arms tightened around the boy, and her heart whispered, "I miss him too." The next morning, she packed 2 bags, one for her, one for her child. No one stopped her. Some didn't even say goodbye. She boarded a small freighter heading back to the colony. The stars passed by slowly, but her heart moved faster with every hour. She didn't know what she would say when she saw him. Did he wait for her? Or had he already moved on, buried her memory in the soil like a dead seed? Her ship landed on the same quiet hillside as before. But the house looked different now. Not broken, not abandoned. It had been rebuilt stronger, with new walls. And the garden lived again. She stepped off the ramp slowly, her son beside her. They walked the old path, the one her feet remembered better than her mind. Her breath trembled as she reached the door. She knocked once, then waited. Moments passed, then footsteps. The door opened. Elias stood there. Older, maybe, or maybe just tired. His eyes locked onto hers. He didn't speak right away, just stared, as if afraid this was a dream that would vanish if he blinked. "I wasn't sure you'd come back," he said at last, his voice low. "I wasn't sure you'd still want us." She replied. He looked at the boy, then back at her. "I always did," he said. "I just didn't think I had the right to ask." She took a step forward, her hands trembling slightly. "I don't want to be your servant," she said quietly. "I never wanted that." Elias said, his voice steady. "Then what do you want me to be?" She asked, her voice barely a whisper. He paused, then stepped aside, opening the door wider. "Whatever you choose," he said. "Friend, family, partner, you were never mine to keep." Her son rushed inside without hesitation, laughing. He ran to the garden, touching every flower like greeting an old friend. Rilke looked around the house. The warmth was still here, waiting for her. "I didn't bring chains," she said with a smile. "I didn't build any," Elias replied, smiling back. That night they sat on the porch, watching the stars like before, but now they sat closer. No words, no promises, just presence. And for the first time, Rilke didn't feel like she was surviving. She felt like she had returned to something she never had before. Not just a home, but a place where love was not owned or owed, it was given freely. The days passed quietly, but not silently. Rilke woke up each morning to the sound of her son's laughter in the garden. Birds sang in the trees. The wind moved through the grass, and somewhere nearby, Elias would be fixing something, planting something, or just watching the sky. They didn't rush to define what they had. There were no labels, no promises carved in stone. But everything they did said one thing: we choose to be here. Together, Rilke had never known peace like this. It wasn't soft or easy. There were still nights when she woke from old nightmares, still moments when Elias stared too long at a photo of his lost child. But now, they didn't face those moments alone. They shared the work, shared the silence, and slowly, they began to share their hearts. One afternoon, Rilke stood in the garden. Watching her son play with the seeds, he had learned how to grow things, not just survive them. Elias came up beside her, his hands dirty from planting. "He's happy," he said. Rilke nodded. "He feels safe," she replied. "So do I." There was a time she had thought safety could only come from distance, from walls, from running before the danger came, but now she saw true safety came from roots, from choosing to stay, even when leaving was easier. Elias handed her a new seedling. "This one's rare," he said, "comes from Earth's old forests." She took it gently, placing it in the soil beside her own people's plants. Human and Valeri life, growing side by side. They didn't talk about the past much anymore. Not because it didn't matter, but because it didn't control them now. It had shaped them, yes, but it no longer held them. Some nights, they sat on the roof together, watching stars. Elias would point out human constellations, Rilke would tell stories from Valeri myths. They'd laugh, argue, share food, and sometimes say nothing at all, and that silence shared, full of trust, was louder than any words. One day, a traveler arrived, a young alien woman, looking for help. She was frightened, thin, and alone. Rilke brought her food. Elias gave her rest. The woman asked, "Is this a sanctuary?" Elias looked at Rilke, and Rilke nodded. "Yes," she said, "it is now." News of their home began to spread, not loud, not famous, just whispers. There's a place where aliens and humans live as equals. There's a man who protects without chains. There's a woman who was once sold, but now she grows flowers instead. Others came quietly. Carefully, one by one, they stayed. And what had once been a lonely house became a living place, a small community rooted in kindness, not ownership. Elias built extra rooms. Rilke taught the children alien songs. Her son became the link between two worlds apart. Valeri, raised by a human's hands, and one day, when he stood in front of the growing crowd and said, "My family is not one blood, but one choice." Everyone understood what that meant. Years passed, the house grew larger, the garden wilder, the stars ever watchful. But the bond between Rilke and Elias never faded. It only deepened, like old roots that know the soil by heart. And on one soft evening, as they stood together watching a new group arrive, families, in search of hope, Elias whispered, "I never thought I'd find something after all the loss." Rilke looked at him, her hand in his. "You didn't find it," she said. "You created it." He smiled. "We created it." And in that moment, she finally understood what love was, not the kind written in stories or traded in words, but the quiet kind, the kind that grows slowly, survives storms, and blooms again even after the fire. She had sold herself once, in fear. But what she had found was not ownership, not survival. She had found a man who saw her pain and chose not to use it. A man who gave her space to heal, time to choose, and a place to belong, and in return, she gave him something he thought he'd never feel again. A future. Together, they had turned a house into a home, a wound into a garden, a transaction into a family. She sold herself to save her child. But the human who bought her gave her love instead, and that made all the difference.